My beloved child. Stop scrolling. Something is waiting for you. Pause here for a moment. What you are about to hear was meant to find you. Do not dismiss this moment too quickly, because some messages arrive only when the heart is finally ready to receive them. There are moments that seem ordinary on the surface, yet heaven whispers through them with such quiet power that everything begins to change. This is one of those moments. Stop scrolling. Something is waiting for you. Pause here for a moment. What you are about to hear was meant to find you. Those words are not here by accident. They are here because your spirit has been searching for something your mind has not yet been able to explain. You have asked silent questions that no one else has heard. You have carried emotions you could not put into words. You have wondered why certain doors remained closed, why certain conversations never happened, why certain people stayed silent even when their hearts were full. Listen carefully, for this is a fictional spiritual story created to inspire and encourage. Imagine that an archangel is speaking directly to your heart, inviting you into a journey of hope, healing, and unexpected revelation. There is someone whose heart has been carrying your name in silence. They tried to convince themselves that their feelings would disappear if they ignored them long enough. They buried memories beneath busy days. They smiled when others looked at them. They laughed when they were expected to laugh. Yet every quiet evening, every lonely road home, every unexpected reminder brought them back to the same truth. You. They never truly escaped the place your memory held within them. Many people believed they had already moved on. Even they tried to believe it. But heaven often sees what human eyes cannot. Every time they whispered your name only inside their thoughts, another layer of truth began breaking through the walls they had built around their heart. Stop scrolling. Something is waiting for you. Pause here for a moment. What you are about to hear was meant to find you. There is a reason those words keep returning. Because sometimes the greatest miracles begin long before anyone notices them. Days ago, something unexpected happened. Not with fireworks. Not with a dramatic announcement. It happened quietly. It happened in a conversation no one expected to become important. Someone asked them a simple question. At first they smiled and tried to change the subject. They pretended everything was fine. They said they were doing well. But truth has a way of pressing against the heart until silence can no longer contain it. The question came again. Are you really over them? For a long moment they said nothing. Their eyes drifted away. The room became strangely still. Even the smallest sound seemed distant. And then, something inside them finally broke open. Not in anger. Not in fear. But in honesty. For the first time in a very long time, they stopped pretending. They admitted they still thought about you. Not occasionally. Not by accident. Constantly. They confessed that they had replayed conversations 1,000 times. They wondered whether one different decision could have changed everything. They admitted they had tried meeting other people. Yet every comparison reminded them of something they once found in you. The person listening was not expecting this. Neither were they. Words poured out faster than they could stop them. Regret. Affection. Hope. Confusion. Gratitude. Longing. Every hidden feeling finally found a voice. Yet what shocked them most was not their own confession. It was the response they received. The listener became completely silent. Not because they were judging them. Not because they were surprised that love still existed. But because they could see something that your soulmate had refused to see for so long. They gently said, "If your heart still speaks their name after all this time, maybe you never truly lost what mattered." Those words echoed deeply. Something shifted. Not around them. Within them. Sometimes the greatest awakening begins with one sentence spoken at exactly the right time. You may wonder why this story is finding you today. Because every heart eventually reaches a crossroads. One road continues pretending. The other chooses courage. Your soulmate stood between those roads. For longer than anyone realized. Every excuse became weaker. Every distraction became less convincing. Every attempt to forget became another reminder. The silence they once depended upon slowly became unbearable. Stop scrolling. Something is waiting for you. Pause here for a moment. What you are about to hear was meant to find you. The journey had only begun. That evening they returned home carrying more questions than answers. Nothing looked different. The same walls. The same window. The same evening sky. Yet somehow everything felt transformed. Because once truth has been spoken aloud, it refuses to become silent again. They sat alone. The room was quiet. No music. No television. No distractions. Only memories. One after another they arrived. The first smile you shared. The first misunderstanding. The conversations that lasted until neither of you noticed the passing hours. The dreams that once seemed possible. The goodbye they still wished had never happened. Every memory carried both warmth and pain. Yet none of them disappeared. Instead they formed something new. Understanding. For the first time they realized they had not been running away from you. They had been running away from themselves. That realization was heavier than they expected. Because accepting love is often easier than accepting regret. Meanwhile, unseen by everyone else in this fictional story, heaven watched with patient compassion. Not forcing. Not controlling. Simply waiting for honesty to bloom. The Archangel whispered hope instead of fear. Not promises of instant endings. But invitations toward healing. Every sincere step mattered. Every truthful word mattered. Every act of humility mattered. Because real transformation rarely arrives in a single dramatic moment. It grows. Quietly. Patiently. Faithfully. And somewhere beyond what either of you could see, unseen circumstances were also changing. Conversations were happening. Opportunities were forming. Old misunderstandings were beginning to loosen their grip. Pieces that once seemed disconnected slowly moved toward one another. No one noticed. Not yet. But heaven often works where human eyes cannot see. The person who heard your soulmate's confession could not stop thinking about what had happened. Those words lingered. The honesty. The emotion. The tears they tried to hide. The hope they almost refused to admit. Finally they whispered something unexpected. You owe yourself the truth. Simple words. yet powerful enough to shake years of emotional distance. Your soulmate asked softly. What if it's too late? The answer came almost immediately. You don't actually know that. Silence followed. Hope entered quietly. Fear remained. Neither one disappeared. Both stood together inside the same heart. And that is where this chapter pauses, not because the story is ending, but because the most important decision has not yet been made. The confession has been spoken. The truth has been acknowledged. But what happens next has the power to change everything. The next step will require more courage than anything that has come before. And someone, somewhere, is about to make a choice neither of you expected. The moment that follows will reveal why that unbelievable response was only the beginning. The night grew quieter, yet the silence no longer felt empty. It felt as though every unanswered prayer, every forgotten tear, and every unspoken word had gathered in one invisible place, waiting for the next heartbeat. Your soulmate could no longer convince themselves that hiding was easier than healing. The conversation from earlier continued to echo through their mind, refusing to fade no matter how hard they tried to distract themselves. They stood by the window, staring into the darkness outside. Nothing unusual could be seen. Cars passed. Lights flickered in distant homes. The world appeared exactly the same. Yet inside their heart, everything had changed. For the first time in a long time, they stopped asking whether they still loved you. Instead, they asked themselves why they had been so afraid to admit it. That single question unlocked emotions they had buried beneath years of pride, uncertainty, and regret. Every excuse suddenly sounded smaller than the truth they had spent so long avoiding. The person who had listened to their confession earlier could not stop thinking about what had happened. Something about your soulmate's honesty felt different. It was not dramatic. It was not forced. It was the kind of truth that only appears after someone has become exhausted from pretending. The next morning, an unexpected message arrived. It was short. It was simple. Yet it carried enormous weight. I've been thinking about everything you said yesterday. Your soulmate looked at those words for several minutes before replying. Their fingers hovered over the screen. They typed a response, erased it, typed another, erased that one too. Fear whispered that silence would be safer. But truth had already begun its work. Finally they answered. I don't know what to do anymore. The reply came almost instantly. You already know. You're just afraid. Those words settled deeply within their heart. Stop scrolling. Something is waiting for you. Pause here for a moment. What you are about to hear was meant to find you. The story was no longer moving because of coincidence. Every conversation was uncovering another layer of what had remained hidden for so long. Throughout that day, memories appeared without warning. A familiar song. A familiar street. A familiar scent carried by the wind. Everything seemed to point back toward you. Not to trap them in the past, but to remind them that some feelings cannot be erased simply because time has passed. Meanwhile, in this fictional spiritual story, heaven remained patient. The Archangel did not speak through thunder. The message arrived through quiet conviction. Every time fear tried to take control, a gentle reminder rose within their spirit. Truth is never your enemy. Those words returned again and again. Truth is never your enemy. Even when it feels uncomfortable. Even when it demands courage. Even when it asks you to become vulnerable. By evening, your soulmate made a decision they had delayed for far too long. They opened an old collection of photographs they had avoided for months. Each picture carried a different chapter. There were smiles they had almost forgotten. Moments that once seemed ordinary now felt priceless. Conversations they wished they could relive. Dreams they wished they had protected more carefully. With every photograph, one realization became impossible to ignore. Their happiest memories were never built upon perfection. They were built upon authenticity. They whispered softly into the empty room. I still care. No one else heard those words. Yet speaking them aloud felt like removing a burden they had carried for far too long. At that very moment, another unexpected conversation began. The same trusted person who had heard their confession asked one final question. If you had one chance to tell them the truth without fear, what would you say? Again there was silence. Longer than before. This time it was not because they lacked words. It was because they had too many. Finally, with tears filling their eyes, they answered. I would tell them that I never stopped hoping they were happy. I would tell them that every day I wondered whether they ever thought about me. I would tell them I regret allowing fear to speak louder than love. I would tell them I wish I had fought harder. The listener smiled gently. Then came the response that changed everything. So why are you speaking those words to me instead of the person who deserves to hear them? The room fell completely silent. Your soulmate looked down. No answer came. Because there wasn't one. Deep inside, they knew exactly what those words meant. The only thing standing between truth and action was fear. But fear was beginning to lose its power. Stop scrolling. Something is waiting for you. Pause here for a moment. What you are about to hear was meant to find you. That night they reached for their phone once more. Their hands trembled. Your name appeared on the screen. For several long moments, they simply stared at it. One tap could begin a completely different chapter. One tap could reopen old wounds. One tap could also open the door to healing. Their heartbeat grew louder. They typed a message. Deleted it. Typed another. Deleted that too. Finally they wrote only a few honest words. Then they stopped. Their thumb hovered above the send button. Time seemed to stand still. Every fear returned at once. What if they've moved on? What if it's too late? What if they don't want to hear from me? Yet another quiet whisper rose within their heart. You will never know if silence keeps making your decisions. Their breathing slowed. Their eyes closed. They gathered every fragment of courage they had left. Their thumb began to move toward the screen. And just before they pressed send, the phone suddenly rang. The name that appeared on the display was the last person they ever expected to hear from. Everything they had planned was interrupted in a single instant. The voice on the other end carried news so unexpected that it left them completely speechless. Whatever happened next would force them to choose between holding on to the past exactly as it was, or stepping into a future they never imagined possible. And that choice would change far more than either of you could possibly see.